Welcome back. We are very fortunate to be joined now by an expert in diversity, equity, and inclusion in both higher education and the private sector. Jordyn Blaise is the owner of Molten Moxie Consulting, which specializes in DEI strategies. She has led diversity programs now at Harvard Law, NC State, and App State, which NC State and App State are in the UNC system, I should mention. Ms. Blaise, thank you so much for joining me. It's very interesting. We just heard two very different perspectives and views of DEI and how it's materializing on UNC's campus. What does DEI seek to do?
So DEI programs seek to foster conversations around difficult topics. They seek to strike a balance. We are constantly thinking about and looking at representation across society and making sure that that representation is reflected in employment, student attendance, et cetera, across the board. And inclusion policies really ask this question: how do we foster voice? How do we foster and empower folks to take part in decision making?
We have heard many people say that they think that DEI is divisive, or it puts certain people's views above others, trainings pushing political views onto people. I'm sure you've encountered that as you're reaching out to different organizations and you're having trainings with in the private sector and in higher education. What do you say to those folks?
One of the main things I say to folks is that diversity, equity, and inclusion, both as a philosophy or as a strategy to approach the work that we're doing, does not specify any particular race, gender, sexual orientation, or aspect of identity. The foundational tenets of DEI are really about understanding difference and rewarding and celebrating that difference. So while today the aspect of someone being underrepresented in a college institution or in a professional space might lend itself toward students of color or women, we're actually seeing trending data right now that overwhelmingly women are represented in matriculating classes at the university system. And in fact, we're seeing diversity and affirmative action policies benefit men. And so it's one of the things that's important to contextualize when we talk about DEI is that it's not specific to a particular identity or aspect of identity, but that it seeks to strike a balance and understand what's happening in present day so that we can make sure that we have that representation across the board.
So you're saying ostensibly it could at some point serve men if men become more underrepresented in an institution? Absolutely.
And again, any of our anti-discrimination policies do not specify a particular race or gender. All of those have been in existence since the early 60s or the mid 60s. And so none of those things are fundamentally changing. I think it's that as the demographics of our society change, how we approach DEI will change and evolve based on those changing demographics.
What happens when these programs go away?
Well, I think we heard it earlier. What happens when these programs go away is that you have staff who have put in a lot of work feeling demoralized. They leave either the university system. I'm one of the examples of that. I went to private industry for that purpose. It is difficult to do this work and every couple of years see that work litigated or discussed in the public sphere and come up for whether or not your work is valued or will be in existence. And I think over time we'll see that people don't find that it's worth the trouble to kind of enter this sphere and constantly be subject to political debate or the whims of different leaders.
What do you think is leading to such kind of this trend and this wave of backlash against DEI? Are you seeing it not practiced well in some cases?
No, I think, quite frankly, what's leading to this trend is a fundamental lack of understanding of what DEI is. I think we heard earlier from Mr. Bullock that DEI had a certain particular point of view or a certain philosophy about things, and none of that is true. I heard the comment that governance, sometimes we have to make decisions in governance that don't allow for people's voice or don't allow people to participate. One of the foundational tenets of inclusion is that when we govern, when we lead and make decisions, we actually do have the opportunity to include the voice of the people directly impacted. So when you look at the policy as written, it is riddled with ambiguity. And so one of the things we talk about when we think about these ideas in DEI is that there's cost reduction involved, but there's also spending that will have to happen. There are countless employee hours, whether that be of counsel, so lawyers in the institution, folks that work in the institution having to interpret and sort out what they mean when they write these policies as they're ambiguously written. And so, one of the things I point people to think about is when we think about backlash, or when we have this concept of, you know, what makes something not of the flavor. I think a lot of this is rooted in politics, right? And that's not actually what DEI is about. It's just the opposite. So when I hear conversations, sorry.
Yeah, no, unfortunately. Thank you, Ms. Blaise. There's so much more to talk about, and we absolutely will. I appreciate your time. If you'd like to share your thoughts, please do. Have a great weekend.